Hey y'all, it's Laura and I have some birthday inspiration for you. So I need to scrap some birthday layouts, get caught up from my kiddos' birthdays over the summer, and so I thought I would pull some birthday layouts to give me some ideas. And yeah, I found 20, so that'll work. I thought I'd share them with you as well. So let's get started with this one on top. There we go. So we've got a lovely grid layout. This one just uses some pocket page cards in the background and probably some scrap paper cut down to fit in the sizes. And then I've got two photos of my niece and her lovely birthday on this layout. We've got a little hidden journaling here. I love this little pocket. So that's a fun little element. And then I like the fact that I've kind of given each of these grid pieces a purpose. So two of them have photos, one has journaling. This one has kind of a mock-up of an invitation, which gives me details about when it happened. And then over here is just kind of a fun one, but it does still have like, enjoy the little things from the garden. And then of course you have a little cake. And so I like that I've given each one kind of its own purpose. This is an embellishment cluster. This is an embellishment cluster. This is an embellishment cluster. Those three created a triangle of interest on the page. And then we have, of course, our photos and our journaling. Just a little fun one. This one is really interesting. I think I had some leftover stars from another star layout, and so I used them on this one. Here it is. So I'm gonna do these two kind of together to kind of show you what I did. They're both birthday layouts, and they kind of go together in how I made them. I made this one first, and what I did is I cut out star shapes in the background of this pattern paper, and those star shapes got used on this layout. And I filled in the background that I had cut out with scraps and manufacturing strips and all that. So a bit of fun just on this left side of the page. And then on this one, these smaller stars here, I cut out of scraps that weren't even full pieces. They were just scraps left over and just tucked in the parts that weren't stars or star shaped, tucked those behind the photo so that you couldn't see. And these two actually ended up using different collections, but I was able to use the leftover bits from this layout on this one. I love that. So pulling this one back in, I really like the three clusters of stars that focus on three different photos. And this one is, of course, the main photo I wanted you to focus on. So I made that one the big star. I also put the title here. So that's where we're going to draw your attention first. But because of the lines of these stars, your eye is automatically guided to the others. And I love that. It's kind of pointing an arrow to the other parts of the layout. And I think that's really fun. To kind of bring everything together, again, an anchor point, I did draw a border around the outside that kind of gathers everyone together in one spot. Back to this one, we do have a smaller title, kind of a banner here in the background, but the big title across the bottom is close to my photos. Now these are the photos that kind of print out from the little games that you play at the Chuck E. Cheese. And so I thought it would be fun to kind of play with this a little bit. I did choose a lighter red in the background intentionally because I wanted these to pop. They're not great photos and they're fairly busy, but I thought, okay, if we go with a kind of a paler red in the background, it kind of makes sense with this design, and the darker red will stand out a little bit more, which catches your attention on the photos. There is another bit of that red here, which kind of brings it into the background in a couple of places, and that helps it feel more cohesive to the background. It acts as an accent. This darker red is an accent in other places, so it feels cohesive, but I've also done a bit of tone on tone work. So I've got a pink one here on top of a little bit pink piece of paper, yellow on top of yellow, blue on blue, and this helps to just kind of make it feel like it's part of the background, and it's not going to draw too much attention to itself, but it's something a little bit interesting to add to the page. Very simple embellishing because there's so much color going on. We've got the banner, just these little word phrases, and then the bottom we have our title, a little bit of chipboard. That's it. That's the only embellishing. This was the major embellishing, is just these few pieces here and then those tiny little words added on. And it's simple, but it works. I think it works really well. This layout is using some frames in the background, and again, we're using the strips So this is manufacturing strips and scraps that I have filled in the background with, that adds lots of color and excitement and interest to the page. And because there's so much color, excitement, and interest in the page, I decided to go with a black background. I don't do black backgrounds very often, but in this particular one, my son's shorts are black. The cake has a lot of dark tones to it. So I think this works quite well to give that anchor, if you will, to the page. It kind of gives you a background that fades out a little bit and lets this part shine. Stacking up these frames, I again did that kind of stair step work. So we've got a frame, we've got a photo, we've got a frame, and it moves down the page. Same here, we've got another stair step happening. So this one goes to here, goes to here. Same on the side as well. I like that. I think it adds a little bit more interest to this background. Now beyond that, you'll notice that my embellishing is very small. There's a lot of embellishments on here, but they're very, very small. And the reason for that is I didn't want to draw too much attention away from my photos by going with large clusters. When you've got so much color in the background here and such a dramatic black background, I thought it would be a little bit much to add big clusters. I just did very small little clusters of embellishments in several places around the page, just to add a bit of interest and detail. Next up, we have this one. Again, this is a busy pattern paper background as well, so I kept it very simple. We've got my two photos here that I've been backed. I don't always add cardstock or pattern paper behind my photos, as you've seen. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But in this case, I did, just to make sure that they stood out from this busy background. Now my title is a cut file, and it kind of blends into the background a little bit here. I'm here for the, which is why I put this on top of my photos so that you can see it. Otherwise it would completely blend into the background and you wouldn't be able to see it. Cake is definitely the star of the show. Again, I kept that really close to my photos to make sure they didn't lose the focus. And then a little bit of simple journaling and some small embellishments added on top. And that's it, super simple layout. A little border here I think really helps to give it that anchor feeling, to make it feel like it stays within a boundary of some kind. I think that works out really well. This next layout was actually using a Halloween collection, and a bit of a challenge for myself in going off theme. I do that quite a lot, but I think it's also fun to see new ways to use themed product. And I just didn't use any of the witchy, Halloween-y, specific ephemera. I just punched a lot of stars from the pattern papers to make sure that it made sense. And what led me to a Halloween collection in the first place was honestly this photo. So this photo has this purple bag, a purple Uno container, and you've got the orange and the black of my son's shirt. And so those three colors to me just absolutely drew me into this collection. In specific, I wanted to make sure that I was matching as best I could the colors in the photos, and this was the one that worked. It just worked. Bringing in other bits and pieces from other collections just to make it work. So bringing in some word phrases and stickers and things that just had kind of a happy or simple generic theme, like good times, love this, the best, you know, things like that that don't necessarily have to say birthday. But to make sure that we know it's a birthday, I did put Happy 13th as the title. This is an acrylic piece here from Bella Boulevard, and that bright green in this one, it kind of ties in the green that is in a lot of other places on this side of the layout, because I noticed this side didn't have much of that green. This particular background paper, for some reason, they're all from the same collection, did not have the green that the other papers had. And so I thought this was a great way to bring that pop of green here as well. And because it's such a bold color, it brings a lot of attention to the two photos that I really wanted to highlight. One of my son next to his older brother, and one of my son next to his uncle, whose birthday it also was being celebrated that day. So they're kind of a dual birthday. And that's a really fun one. I love these little tags coming down the side. These are anchor points for these three photos. And then we of course have this larger piece of paper as the anchor point for this side of the layout. These beautiful cut file stars in the background worked really well to create kind of an anchor point just for the photos themselves, and the rest of them, these pieces just kind of float down the page, kind of like how you would read a book. So that is this one. Next up, we have a layout of my grandfather's birthday. And again, I picked two photos that I think really captured the mood and feeling of this day. One blowing up the cake, of course, classic birthday photo, but also him with a lot of his great grandkids in the background, just to kind of show how excited and busy this particular birthday was. My grandfather's birthday had a lot of people there for his 80th. And so this kind of just a little homage to the feeling of being in a busy room with a lot of people celebrating this special day for him. So this one, I did a cutout of a heart, added it onto the background. Where am I pulling these colors from? This one is a little bit more subtle. I wanted Grandpa to stand out, so I did not use the blue here in the background. So this blue in his shirt and his trousers is really the only blue, like that's the only sharp dark blue contrasting color in the background of these photos. So I thought that would be a great way to make him pop by not using that color. And I call that just the rule of color avoidance. And I'm sure it has another fancy rule, but that's what I call it, just color avoidance, not using that color to make sure it draws your eye in. And then I did use it on the title, again, to tie it in with the layout, but also close to the photos so it doesn't detract attention away. Their purple comes in a lot of the kids' clothes and also in the decorations in the background. So we've got pops of purple here, purple in the background here. That also just works really well with the navy. I find purple and navy go well together. And yellow is kind of the opposite color of purple and yellow. So it works as a highlight onto the page. And there's lots of yellow in the background of these photos. So that works as well. Pops of gold, just for a bit of fun and flair. These are painted wood veneer that kind of trail up the side. And so you have a little bit of a very horizontal look to the layout. And this just gave it a little bit more interest by going vertical in one spot. Speaking of horizontal layouts, this is another one. This one was a really fun one. Just using a stencil in the background and some markers to trace it out. I think there were paint pens. And then I came in with some Nuvo drops. I don't know if you can see that. Some Nuvo drops and added little points on all of the stars, little drops of Nuvo on all of the stars to give them the added detail, a little bit of fun. And then I have my 3 photos on this one strip as an anchor point. Coming down, we have a longer title leading into the journaling. And because this was so busy, I wanted to keep this very simple. That way the attention stays on the photos, and this is just kind of where your eye is guided down to rest at the bottom with the journaling. Here's another idea. We're doing strips of, these are cut aparts and scraps that were left over from other layouts. So I've just used those to create my anchor point in the background. I've got some mixed media along the sides, which kind of helps to spread out the design in the background just a little bit more beyond the scraps that I had to use. It also helps to tie in this kind of a cherry red. Again, can't find a lot of this cherry red in the collections that I use, so sometimes I have to add it in with a little bit of mixed media in the background. I mean, this is close. This is sort of close, but it's a little bit darker. So I really wanted that pop of cherry red, and so I made sure to tie it in with some mixed media. This way we've gone with a diagonal embellishing. So we've got a big cluster of embellishments here, a big cluster of embellishments here. This helps to guide your eye all the way through the page so you see everything that's happening. We have a large title, but it's very simple. Because we have so much going on in the background, I wanted to keep the title very, very simple. It is large though, so it does draw your attention in again to the photo, but it is very simple and just a couple of word phrases underneath. I think this was a scrap lift, so you'll probably find most of these layouts have videos, but this one would definitely be in the Scrap Lift Sunday collection. Here we go. This layout is a fun one. I think this one may also have been a scrap lift. I'm not sure. Possibly a scrap lift as well. This one has a very, very simple background, but when you're going with bright colors like this, you don't have to have a very detailed paper heavy background to make it work. You can go with bright colors using some watercolor, which is what I've done here, and a stencil. So just kind of traced out these shapes with my stencil and then come in with watercolor and sort of messily filled them in. Just a bit of fun. Did some splatters on the outside to make sure that messy look looked intentional. I've got a cut file that makes all of these little photos into a photo strip, and then my one larger photo, which is where I want all of the attention to go with my title. journaling underneath. But I love these little arrows. I thought this was a fun way to just kind of connect the different sections. So we've got arrows up here, and then we've got little bits kind of filling in this gap here. And then over here, so we've got 1 cluster, 2 clusters, 3 clusters. Again, that triangle of embellishments that kind of draws your attention in to the point of the layout. And again, we have a border for an anchor. Here's a birthday layout that went monochromatic. I'm pretty sure this was from Scrap Timber. I don't normally do monochromatic layouts. As you can see, I love color. I love to include a lot of color. And so if I see one, it's generally because it was a prompt for Scrap Timber. This one uses tags of different sizes, again with that stair step design, which I think adds a little bit more interest and draws the eye into the larger photo, which is the one I want you to focus on. The ones in the background are just kind of details, right? These are details of the story. We had gone to Chuck E. Cheese for the girl's birthday, and so this is about Sophia, and this will go into her album, so she is the focus and not her twin. And this beautiful blue was what helped me choose which color to use. We've got several shades of blue in these photos, and so it works quite well to just do a blue layout. I did a large title at the bottom that was a mix of kind of a fussy cut pattern paper that had words in it, and then some chipboard, and then added little embellishments because it's separate, so separate from my photos. I wanted to give it just a little bit of embellishment on the side, but not too much to draw attention away from the photos themselves. For this layout, I wanted to play with a lot of embellishments that were trickier to use on other layouts. So I don't often scrapbook food, but this was a trip to the ice cream shop to celebrate their birthdays. The ice cream shop sends us coupons, so they get free ice cream for the girls for their birthday. And so we all went. They got their free ice cream. We paid for ours, of course, but we had a fun day at the ice cream shop, and we were eating out on this little kind of patio area. And so I thought, let's put the photo in the center that's kind of the group, and then individual shots of the girls we were celebrating for this birthday. So Summer Celebrate. And then down here at the bottom and at the top, we have a row of little grid pattern paper squares with black and white squares inside. So that creates little borders around the black and white squares. And then I just filled in some embellishments, and I really wanted to use as many food related embellishments on this layout as possible because it's actually about us eating food, which is something I don't scrap very often. And I've got little clusters, sometimes using a word phrase as an anchor to kind of glue it all together and make it work as a little cluster. Here we've used an arrow instead, but the same concept, either overlapping them together or using a word phrase to kind of tie them together. Background behind my photos is super simple. I used these ephemera clouds and these puffy clouds as my anchors, on top of which I put my photos and my title. And so it feels very cohesive in one little long piece horizontally in the middle. Up next, we have this one. And so we've got a nice dark background. And I loved these little squiggly lines here, and I kind of wanted to go with those squiggly lines. So what I did is I used some Nuvo drops to create some little jewel toned lines coming down from the main photo and journaling cluster here at the top. So this is just a piece of packaging actually from a Chamel collection. I love the color. I really think it makes it pop off the background. We've got some purple in the background of some of these photos at the bottom, so I thought let's bring it into the top as well. Add my journaling spot, add my larger photo, and then a little cluster of embellishments that goes horizontally and connects them together, creates this kind of a finished piece at the top. And at the bottom, these are connected via those little jewel toned lines, but they each have their own individual space. They're not connected to each other. And so we have L-O-V-E connecting them with a word instead. And I really like the way that looks. We've got some vellum behind the photos, which is a great way to add a border without adding more color to the page. So I had a lot of colors happening. We brought in some reds intentionally because there was reds in the background of the photos. I've tucked in some extra red pieces just to make sure that it makes sense at the top and the bottom. The whole thing feels cohesive that way. This was a neat idea. One of the pattern papers I had these lovely cut aparts that had a birthday wish list. And I just used it as a journaling spot. So you don't have to fill it in with what it says to fill in. And I talked about on here some of the things that he wanted and some of the things that he was looking forward to. And so that way we are covering the title of my birthday wish list is addressed, but also we're talking about other thing that was happening on his birthday. And again, this is another column design. So we've got some cut apart and border pieces just stacked on top of each other, gaps filled in with puffy stickers. So again, it's similar to a pocketless page design, a collage of sorts on this left side. And then on the right side, I took 3 photos that were 3x4, have my anchor point in the background. We've got this which I think is actually maybe a thicker pocket page card. Yes, this feels like a pocket page card in the back, so probably a 4x6 pocket page card. I've got a border strip here that I've cut down, or potentially a sticker. Might be a sticker, but again, that's my anchor underneath of my photos. That this is where the photos belong, a little shelf, if you will. When I say anchor, I'm also kind of referring to a shelf. That just kind of gives you a mental position of where the photos are going to go and gives them kind of a home to sit on top of, a little place to sit. And in my brain, that makes sense. I created a circle with one of my chipboard templates and then filled it in with enamel dots because I have been trying to use up my enamel dots. I do remember that. I was trying to use up a lot of enamel dots. Simple embellishing from here because we have all of these beautiful details here. We've got a strong color in the background, and then we have all of this going on the left side. I kept the embellishing here very simple. A small cluster here, a small cluster next to the title. That's it. But this is a really fun one. It also has 4 photos, so we want to keep things fairly simple when we have a lot of photos. This layout, again with the busy background, I love to capture the energy in a layout. And so when photos from birthdays are always exciting holidays, I do tend to go for bright colors, lots of energy happening, and the same for this one as well. Now to make sure the photos stood out, I grabbed some black pattern paper, black and white polka dots. And so the photos themselves are in black on the outside. We have small elements of black in the background, but not a lot. So make sure those get a lot of attention. And then we have, of course, a little bit of busyness in the background. The nice thing about this background, even though it's a bold color, and even though it does look a little bit busy, it's a repeating design. So this lovely kind of rope effect in the background actually doesn't draw terribly much attention away from everything else because it's a repeating design and it's all one color. The white on top of that sort of a peachy tone is all one color. So it's, even though it's a little busy, it's not drawing a lot of attention to itself. And what I did to work with it is I kept my embellishing more vertical, a little bit to the diagonal, but mostly top to bottom. I have one title up here at the top, one title here at the bottom, doing a bit of mirroring. Here we're doing mirroring as well, and here as well. And what that does is to create just a solid base underneath of my photos that doesn't draw a ton of attention to itself, but it is interesting. It's satisfying to the mind to see a match like this. And so we don't necessarily pay a lot of attention to it because all that looks nice, but what you really focus on is what's different. And that's going to be the black outlines on these photos. Up next, we have a very busy background. That's becoming a theme with birthday layouts, I noticed. This is a very busy background, but the colors were too perfect. And so I kept my layout itself very, very simple. As you can see, I just got a pocket here, tucked away our journaling out of the way because we didn't have a lot of space to work with. And I wanted it to feel like the layout was part of the background. It was intentionally kind of blending in to the background, but that it was not covering up too much of the background because then it would feel like it was interrupting the background. So I've got my little pocket here. I've got a frame. I've got some word phrases underneath. And so you've got just little touches of color and an anchor underneath. So you have bits and pieces of layers underneath of the photos to give it a place to sit. But at the same time, I've added smaller little stickers and things that kind of lead the design into the background itself. Love this one. This layout is fairly simple. Again, but there are a lot of colors going on though, so I went with a dark navy background just to kind of give it a little bit of an anchor. And I could have gone with black. Black would have worked really well with this actually. And I think the only reason that I didn't is because there was a lot of navy as well. And I thought that if I used a black background, that it would be a little bit too dark, because there are some heavily saturated colors here. Even though they're bright, I think I was really concerned about losing some of this blue tone that is in just a couple of places if I used black in the background. It was just a little bit too stark. This way also I could use a black title and pick up the black elements in the photos, and not using that black helps to bring attention into that photo. Now we've got a lot of colors happening here, and so I felt pretty open to do whatever color scheme I wanted. I've got lots of shades of blues, of reds, of purples, of grays and yellows and oranges, and all of the colors. And so I could bring in some kind of a rainbow effects here and there. I did a subtitle cluster at the top. This was a scrap lift. I can already tell you that. This is stacks of pattern paper, and that's not normally my style, is using big chunks of paper. So this was probably a scrap lift because they're all kind of layered up like I've seen a lot of other people do. And so this was probably a scrap lift. My way of keeping this interesting was taking these two banners, I think it was 2 banners, and I've cut one in half and put it off to the side. So I've created 3 clusters here of embellishments that are anchored with this banner, added a bunch of little bits and pieces to make them interesting, and then I have a large title at the bottom, and I think that helps to kind of move your eye through the layout so you see all the little elements that have been added. We've got our journaling at the bottom, but I think it works. It's a little bit outside of my normal type of scrapbooking, but with all of this paper in the background that's just sort of stacked haphazardly together. But it was a fun one. I remember making this one, and it was a lot of fun. So next up is this one. This one was for my mom's birthday. And so I did a cut file background. This is just one cut file that I've backed with a lot of different papers. And again, pulling colors from the photos. We've got a lot of reds and blues and some gray. And so that's kind of what led me to this pattern paper here that had a lot of those colors. Grandma's wearing green in this part, so I've got a little bit of that green here as well. And so I'm just trying to find collections. And usually I start with a multicolor paper that I think captures not only the colors, but kind of the feel of these photos. So these are just some very calm little hearts in the background stacked up together, very lovey sort of feel. And these are these cuddly little pictures, so I thought that worked quite well. Bringing in some yellow, even though there's no yellow in these photos, there is some yellow in our multicolored paper. And so that's a good way to bring in some contrasting colors that maybe don't exist otherwise. I really liked this paper here because it perfectly matched the background of my grandma's photos. She was on a tablet, kind of phone call, FaceTime sort of situation. And I thought it was fun to tie in that color specifically. And I really like this one. I like the fact that even though these little pinwheels that come out the side are sort of busy, it also at the same time has sort of a soothing effect. I think the butterflies and the butterfly trails kind of soften things quite a bit and make it a little less busy, a little less wild. And then we've got our very simple title underneath my photos, 3 photos on the page. The embellishing is minimal. Super minimal. Again, with the diagonal embellishments, we've got some at the top right, some at the bottom left, and that's about it. When you've got a lot going on in one area, I do find it best to do very simple embellishing on top of it. Up next, we have a 9x12 layout, again, of one of my kiddos' birthdays. This time we've come in with hexagon frames and done a vertical top to bottom layout. So we've got some frames, and then these are the inside pieces of these frames. And in some of them, what I did was they're double-sided paper. So I was able to cut them out, let's say this shape, use the frame on this side of the paper, and then use the inside piece from a different side of the paper. So we've got nice bright pastel colors to match the photos. Again, my girls do wear a lot of beautiful, beautiful pinks and purples and blues. And so we've pulled in a lot of those colors into the background to make sure that they fit in. We don't have a lot of yellow in these photos, just a little bit, I think, on the doll. But because that yellow exists in our pattern papers that do match, we can bring in that yellow in other places as a contrasting color that really helps those photos pop. So you notice that most of the yellow I have put close to the photos, the bigger pieces here, close to the photos, so that they don't draw attention away from the photos. If anything, they kind of help the photos stand up and stand out. I did a lot of embellishing on this one, but small embellishing. So we just have one of the titles here. This is kind of a subtitle up at the top with this photo. These two photos are crowded around the larger title here at the bottom. And then just smaller little things, little clusters throughout the rest of the page, just to keep a little bit of movement and energy on the page, because this was a very energetic, exciting time. Birthdays are always that way, and I like to capture that feeling as well. Last but not least, we have this one, which is another circle layout. If you've been watching some of my flip throughs, you'll notice I do love to play with circles, and this is one of those. So I have used my dies to cut out some acetate that had these lovely little hearts. The best thing about these photos is not only do we have this beautiful navy, which I've captured with this paper, but this lovely little set here had so many beautiful colors. It had lots of purples and shades of pink and like a lighter blue and some like tealy colors. And so I was able to bring in this collection from Bella Boulevard, and that had all of those colors and just perfectly matched these photos. And I love when that happens. I love when that happens. And then this was one of my older kids' shirts, matched perfectly with the kind of the tealy green color, and that was really fun too. So I think the color matching is probably my favorite part when I'm first starting, as I don't always know what design I'm going to use, but playing with the colors and trying to make sure that I'm complementing the photos with my color choices, but also again playing with those color avoidance techniques and trying to decide which colors to focus on and which colors to stay away from. And when I'm using a lot of colors like I did in this layout, I go with a very simple cardstock background like this to help those stand out. These are bold, bright colors, so I just went with a simple white cardstock background. Because this is super busy, I also did a little border to kind of anchor the whole thing and make it feel like it has limits, like there's a boundary here. These bubbles aren't going to float off into space. And I really love the layering as well. So I hope these gave you some ideas. I definitely am ready to scrap some birthday photos. The energy, I love the energy of every single one of these. They were so fun. But that's what I'm going to go start doing. I hope you all have a lovely, lovely day. And until next time, bye y'all.